For a record 6 years now, Squarespace has been helping me turn my dream into reality, and that's what Squarespace does for millions of other people too. Their industry-leading website creation tools help millions of people start new careers, build new businesses, or just get things done. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more.
Alright, another year, another Guild Wars 2 expansion review from yours truly. The MMO's 6th expansion, Visions of Eternity, released last week, and I've been playing it to an unhealthy degree, which along with the title should give you some indication of how I feel about it. It comes at an interesting point in the game's life. For current Guild Wars 2 players, the last expansion was broadly well received, but the final patch, the one preceding Visions of Eternity's launch, was a real disappointment across the board. So Visions of Eternity had a lot to make up for in that sense. It needed to assure us that patch wasn't indicative of what we could expect moving forward, and that ArenaNet's best talent hasn't just moved on to the other project they seem to be working on. Then for non-Guild Wars 2 players, this release coincidentally follows the announcement of New World going into maintenance mode, along with the shutdown of multiple other in-development MMOs. I imagine there are now many people left feeling a little lost, looking for a new MMORPG to saddle up with for the long term, and this expansion, if well received, could signal Guild Wars 2 as their buoy. Fortunately, Visions of Eternity delivers. This expansion feels like a direct response to all the feedback ArenaNet have garnered over the last couple of years. Criticisms around the game's narrative being a touch predictable at this point, and having too much standing around doing nothing. Around many of the new maps in recent expansions lacking in their visuals, design, or events. Around the new combat features not being quite as impactful as what's come in the game's first 3 expansions. Around the lack of long-term chase items on an expansion launch. Around enemy design. All of these things have been seemingly addressed here in Visions of Eternity, resulting in, I think, the strongest Guild Wars 2 expansion since ArenaNet's shift to this yearly expansion model some 3 years ago. Not all of it are an absolute knockout. I do have some things to say regarding rewards and its large-scale events, but where it counts for me, Visions of Eternity delivers everything I could want from a Guild Wars 2 expansion, much of it far exceeding my expectations, marking a surprisingly strong start to a promising year for Guild Wars 2. Visions of Eternity begins with the discovery that the Inquest, an unregulated splinter group of the Asura, the game's small yet highly intelligent race, appear to be traveling en masse to a mysterious island known to seafarers as Castora. So we set sail to follow them there and get to the bottom of what they're up to. For the most part, I've enjoyed Guild Wars 2's story just fine. It has its moments, but I can admit it often relies heavily on its scale, spectacle, and charm to entertain, and can also end up being quite predictable on account of its villains. Initially, I thought Visions of Eternity was going to be more of that. All signs pointed to a pretty cut and dry case of bad guys colonizing and destroying a once beautiful place. We stopped them from doing that, job done. To my surprise, there's a little more to it than that, and that realization hit me like a brick during one specific cutscene. Now I'm going to get into spoilers, so if you don't want that, skip to the timestamp on screen. 3, 2, 1. Alright, spoilers now, you've been warned. So ArenaNet, you guys are cheeky. They pulled a really clever bait and switch here where the trailers painted the main villain as this guy, Seb, a crazed bioengineer experimenting on the local wildlife, hence why I figured the story would follow predictable beats. But then we meet this guy.
It is an incalculable delight to finally meet you, Commander. Your reputation precedes you, as I fear mine must precede me. I think you'll find me quite unlike the tales you've heard. I won't waste your time with trivialities. Both of us are far too busy for that. I want you to help me save our world.
At this point, I was locked the F in, dude. Vlox is a villain slash anti-hero not driven by his own selfish desires. In fact, you later find out he cares not for his own survival, nor legacy. His goals more or less align with our own, to safeguard the world from future threats. Only he wants to put that power in the hands of the people rather than the immortal beings we've allied with. And, you know, he's got a point. The seeds of doubt he plants against our all-powerful allies isn't unwarranted. I mean, we've shared these skepticisms ever since Secrets of the Obscur, really. All in all, he is considerably more intriguing than many of the villains we've had in this game who simply wish to rule or destroy the world. As far as I can tell, he's voiced by the same guy as Silco from Arcane, and that explains a lot. He's given Vlox a similar calm, soft-spoken demeanor that exudes such presence and self-assuredness every time he speaks. Absolutely stole the show. So yeah, this story so far is easily one of the most captivating threads we've seen from Guild Wars 2, with a compelling villain at its center, but I am treating this with cautious optimism. Like the previous two expansions, this is only half the story, with the rest being delivered over the next year, and while they too started quite strong, they completely fumbled their final acts, so it remains to be seen whether or not ArenaNet can actually stick the landing this time. What's definitely improved is the delivery. Prior expansions have been criticized for having a lot more talking than actually playing. Personally, I didn't mind that. I think it's important to have those moments to breathe, but certainly the pacing could feel a little off sometimes. Visions of Eternity strikes a much better balance in its missions. The intro alone, for example, had some investigation, some stealth, followed by a cool swashbuckling sequence making the journey to Castora feel as perilous as it's made out to be, where the introduction to new locations has historically been handled via a single brief mission or cutscene. Something else I quite liked about this story are these new main quests. They have you completing collections. Instead of just pointing you to your next objective, these send you on a sort of scavenger hunt for items, forcing you to use your ears and eyeballs, recall places you've been or events you've completed. Being able to pinpoint where an item was because an hour prior I stumbled on a location that fit the hint's description, that felt really gratifying in a way that no story quests in this game ever have, or indeed those in many other MMORPGs. I know this has been met with some frustration given how vague some of the hints are, and that 3 of these collections were perhaps one too many, and I agree. Fundamentally though, I think this is genius and beautifully plays into the exploration that is one of this game's greatest strengths. It's especially fitting for this expansion to be the one to introduce them, given the amount of work that's gone into these 2 new maps. You might recall I strongly recommended the previous expansion, and a major reason for that was because its first map brought back the sense of wonder I had when I first got into the game, in its visuals, its design, and its density and variety of events. Well, both maps here in Visions of Eternity are on that same level, if not better. The first map, Shipwreck Strand, honestly didn't impress me all that much in the preview, but man, it turns out that being let loose to explore on my own accord at max settings with the new update to Shadows is a completely different experience to being guided through it with voices in my ear and watermarks all over my screen. Its undulating turquoise waters and tropical coastland are stunning, but more impressive is how multi-layered it is between the various tunnels both above and below the water. The first time I dove deeper into its waterways, I chanced upon a winding underwater tunnel, and I followed it for a time, and when I finally surfaced, I discovered a secluded cavern illuminated by glowworms. Come to find, this is just one of many grottos like this, and not even the most arresting, if you can believe it. So I was already in love with this place and had my fingers crossed that the second map, Starlit Weald, would follow suit in a way that the second map of Janthia Wilds didn't. And by golly, did it follow suit. This is straight up one of the most gorgeous locations in the entire game, easily in the top 3 for me. Guild Wars 2 has done magical forests before, and to be honest, I wasn't really sure how they'd do another one without it feeling just like a mere rehash of what's come before, but Starlit Weald does have its own distinct beauty, with its gargantuan trees and plant life seeping magic and bioluminescent spores into the surrounding area, its thick fog giving way to ancient ruins further inland. It's this spellbinding blend of Avatar's Pandora and the Forest of Ori. Wandering around this place for the first time, I was just completely in awe. These maps have been cleverly designed around the revamped Skimmer. This is a mount that historically didn't get much mileage since all it did was make it move faster over water, and that's really useful, but it is here as the many interconnecting water channels almost act like highways. Its new barrel roll dash combined with a boost that gives you more speed and height for a time also make it surprisingly fun to use and bring its overall efficacy closer in line with that of the other mounts. The maps have plenty of other things going for them too, such as the enemies. I can't overstate just how refreshing it feels to not be fighting a faction of amorphous blobs of flesh or rock that paint the ground in ugly, blinding AoEs. Instead, in Visions of Eternity, we're fighting hostile, prehistoric and mystical creatures native to the island, alongside the Inquest and their machinations, all with distinctive designs and clear attack telegraphs. I also really love the music. This is actually the first soundtrack that the talented McLean Damer wasn't involved in, but man, composers Brian Atkinson and Ben Ash have really stepped up to the plate. Most of the soundtrack here is noticeably more understated than previous expansions, but the way these soft, cello-led melodies allow for the natural ambience of the island to come through acts as a perfect companion to the exploration. If you've never played Guild Wars, you're probably confused as to why I'm putting so much attention into these maps, since the addition of new maps is typically little more than a footnote in most MMOs, because you kind of just zoom through them to get to the end game. Very quickly, you stop thinking about how they look or how they're laid out. But in Guild Wars 2, that stuff really matters, because these maps make up much of the endgame, so I'm glad that ArenaNet continue to outdo themselves in that regard. Both these new maps are beautiful and absolutely packed with things to do. I mean, even a week after launch, I still find myself ogling at the sights and sounds and discovering new jumping puzzles, enemies, side stories, and events.
I'm studying the Gildal. Based on my research, they might be related to tree ants. They're really powerful, a little mischievous.
I will say that the two large-scale events, that being the world boss in the first map and the big meta event in the second map, aren't as great as I hoped, especially considering ArenaNet haven't really been on a roll with these. Don't get me wrong, I love the music and the tight damage checks of both, and the spectacle of the latter event is especially incredible with all the magical effects going on, and the platform you're fighting on being raised higher with every phase transition. A lot of people have said that this is the best meta event in years, and yeah, I kind of agree, but I also think that both of these events are lacking more dangerous attacks from their respective bosses, ones that require more movement and healing to overcome. Without those, they feel like rather static fights in my opinion, which sucks given they're the main thing you'll be coming back for once all is said and done. Similarly, I think rewards are in kind of a weird spot as well. The most exciting ones are the 3 new legendaries, a real step up from the prior 2 expansions which had 0 at launch. So that's really awesome. Clearly the studio's taken the feedback on the lack of long-term chase to heart, but one of them, the Aqua Breather, is kind of the most useless one and only really worthwhile for those who have decked out every other slot in legendaries. Likewise, the other 2 legendaries are combined as a sort of 2-for-1 deal, which is really interesting, but it means it's like 2 to 3 times the cost of a normal legendary, putting it way out of reach for even rusted on players like myself. It's a shame that these are really only compelling to the hardcore crowd, given these are basically the only thing the new rewarded currencies are useful for. All that said, there's no shortage of other things to work towards, and we are of course getting new rewards with every following update, including legendaries, which are sure to give us more reasons to spend time in these maps. But to this point, I still haven't even mentioned by far the most impactful addition that's come with Visions of Eternity, the new elite specializations. These are kinda analogous to subclasses, granting new abilities and providing a twist on your class's core mechanic, often radically changing the way they play. The prior 2 expansions just unlocked access to new weapons, and those were great, but admittedly not as game-changing as the elite specializations that we were getting when expansions were produced under 2 to 3 year dev cycles. But remarkably, ArenaNet have managed to deliver a whole new slate of elite specializations here in Visions of Eternity, and all of them are excellent. In fact, this is actually the first time I've felt compelled to unlock every single one of these at the launch of an expansion. They've brought in the remaining Guild Wars 1 classes in some form, like the Summons Heavy Ritualist for Necromancer, and the Angelic Paragon, finally giving Warrior a support-oriented spec. They lean into some long-requested class fantasies, such as a Bard-like spec for the Mesmer, and an acrobatic bow-focused spec for the Ranger, which I've wanted for a while now. My personal favourites though were actually the weirder ones, like the Amalgam for the Engineer, which fuses with a metallic ooze to morph into various states and manifest weapons akin to the T-1000 in Terminator. Just a super flexible spec and has awesome animations. I know this is probably unpopular opinion, but the surprise standout for me was the Antiquary, a sort of treasure hunter spec for the Thief that has rats scrounge up random artifacts for you to weave into combat. Love how much this forces you to adapt on the fly rather than adhere to a strict rotation. My only note is that with all the extra flashy effects going on, the visual noise is getting pretty gnarly. It really is about time we got some way to cull all, and I mean all, the effects coming from other players. That aside, really happy with these elite specs. Despite not being particularly drawn to the new large-scale events and rewards at the moment, the way these elite specs revitalize all the game's content has me as excited as ever to log in every every day and to work toward my many outstanding goals, both within and outside this expansion. In closing this review, I want to touch on the current and long-term health of the game, since that's kind of important to know if you're looking to jump into a new MMO, or indeed return to one. The good news is, the future is looking pretty damn bright. Despite being over 13 years old now, the population still appears to be growing. It actually hit a new peak player count on Steam at over 10,000 players this week. That probably doesn't sound like much, but note that that only accounts for like 10% of the player base at most, since it only came to Steam about 3 years ago and doesn't allow count transfers. So the vast majority of the population aren't playing through Steam, but it's a pretty good yardstick. So why is this happening? Well, first and foremost, Guild Wars 2 is just a damn good MMO, and word of mouth about it has slowly but surely spread over the years. I also think a part of it is that as the MMO population grows older, people have less time, so they're looking for one that doesn't require you to constantly log in to keep up with gear, or to get value out of a sub fee, and Guild Wars 2 fills that gap. Then there's the fact that the MMO space is quite fraught. There's the dire state of Destiny right now, the release of Ashes of Creation seems further away every year, as does Riot's MMO. Then there's the recent cancellation of Ghostcrawler's MMO, and the closure of the New World studio with their in-development Lord of the Rings MMO vanishing with them. Those who feel the major MMOs have grown stale, or are looking to enter the space for the first time, are hungry for something that feels fresh, and something that isn't going to come crumbling down anytime soon. As an MMO that is quite different in its design, that's kind of flown under the radar for many, and continues to get regular updates, Guild Wars 2, again, fits that bill. And yeah, to be clear, we do know ArenaNet is cooking something in the background. It's obvious from the job listings and from senior leadership being less hands-on with the game, and I do think they're doing themselves a disservice by keeping us in the dark. But whether it's a Guild Wars 3, which it probably is, or something else entirely, you can rest assured they'll keep the servers running for Guild Wars 2, as they've done with Guild Wars 1 over 20 years later. But I don't think Guild Wars 2 is going into maintenance mode anytime soon, given the kind of updates this game's been getting lately. The expansion brought an update to Shadows, we've got fashion templates on the way, we've had big changes to the World vs. World mode, restructuring it around guilds rather than servers. We recently had an entirely new PvP mode and map, something the game hasn't had in like 8 years. They're also throwing a lot of weight behind the PvE endgame as well, with the next patch entirely devoted to merging the single boss strikes and multi-boss raids under one banner, consolidating reward schemes, giving it its own handy UI portal so they can be tracked and accessed from anywhere, and finally adding matchmaking for the lower difficulty fights, as they've recently done with Fractal Dungeons. All long overdue, but very much welcome. Finally, we've been getting expansions like this one, which add meaningful new content to the game, some of it exceeding what's come before, with even more maps, story, and encounters to be added over the next year, all for just $25 US. And the real beauty of these Guild Wars 2 expansions compared to the competition is that they don't shrink the game by making the new stuff the only stuff worth doing, nor do they ever risk tarnishing the entire game. Looking at you, Destiny. They have only ever served to make the game bigger and better. With this expansion launch bringing the total amount of subclasses in the game to 37, now standing toe-to-toe against World of Warcraft on that front, alongside 2 awesome new maps, one of the most compelling story threads in the game's history, and a rising player count, Visions of Eternity marks Guild Wars 2 as the biggest and best it's ever been, and I strongly recommend it to you.
You'll have noticed that we just launched a website, thisweekinvideogames.com. There are lots of different ways to build a website, lots of platforms and tools and companies that'll do it for you. But here's the bottom line. The overwhelming majority of people who might need a website for their work, their personal brand, or their hobby, they don't need all of that complexity. They just need an intuitive, reliable tool that lets them build a great looking website with ease, and that's exactly what this video sponsor, Squarespace, lets you do. Squarespace lets you build professional looking websites in minutes. You just select from their extensive list of pre-built templates, customize those templates to your design, and boom, you're in business. It really is that easy. Squarespace's intuitive tools and huge library of templates makes it super easy to get started. If you can handle formatting a Word document or a PowerPoint slide, then you are already well and truly equipped to make a fantastic looking website through Squarespace. Once it's live and your content starts going up, Squarespace has all sorts of back-end tools to help you track and grow your site, Detailed analytics tools showcase what your audience is clicking on, and SEO tools and social media integration make it easier for your audience to find you. There's even advanced AI tools baked right into the workflow, giving you help with things like copywriting and proofreading. It's an easy-to-use end-to-end solution that could change your life, to be honest. A website is one of the best ways to get yourself or your business out there. It's why we started thisweekinvideogames.com, and so if you're thinking about kicking off something new, either personally or professionally, a website is certainly going to be a great step in that process. If you want to get started, then visit squarespace.com to start building your website through their free trial, and if you want to get serious, use offer code SKILLUP to get 10% off your purchase of a website or a domain name. Thanks very much to Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.